The band is playing. The band played all the way down to the bottom on the Titanic as well. That music right there, you might hear that in a discotheque in Bratislava or East Berlin back in the old days. Love that music. It's podcast music. Rob Browne, Doug Dean, Ronnie Sanders, Kevin Skarbinski on deadline today. But guys, we started off on our morning show on this channel, Sideline Sports. Barry Trammell, legendary sports writer, long time, 48 years with the Daily Oklahoman, now the Tulsa World. Brenda and I had a chance to talk with Barry. He's excited about this matchup. This is a big one. It's a big game by Norman standards, and they've been in a lot of them. And we talked about, hey, Auburn fans, what can you expect when you get to Norman? And he gave a lot of good color on that. And he said, it's not like you think it is. We're not the Midwest. We're the West. A lot of T intersections, but lots of great restaurants and bars, and a fan base is passionate. And Barry Trammell said, all my visits in the SEC last year, Auburn was without doubt my favorite. He goes, that place is special. So got a great matchup coming up Saturday. This is old school, guys. 3:30 Eastern on ABC, and the numbers on ABC college football this year are off the charts. I know y'all have seen them.
Is Keith Jackson calling this one, Rob? That's old school.
Oh, Nelly. We're going to get him and Frank Broyles back there.
Man, they're going to accuse us of being old guys. I don't want to drag y'all down with me, you young fellers. But, man, you knew it was old school when you had 3 channels on your TV. One of them was a Rabbit Ears. Yes. And if you were lucky and Bear Bryant didn't schedule it, if Alabama had an open date, maybe Auburn would get on TV on ABC, right? Unless it was the Iron Bowl.
Yeah. They couldn't keep that off. But 5 times in a 2-year period, Ronnie, that was the old days. Do you remember that, Ronnie?
I remember growing up, we had 3 channels, and then I remember when Fox finally came on and we had 4, but you had to turn the antenna to get it. So up in North Alabama, it was 31 was ABC, 19 CBS, 48 was NBC, and 54 was Fox. But we couldn't get you had to turn the antenna just right to get Fox.
And was it the Baylor game that the YouTube TV got in a dispute and fans were saying, okay, well, this is ABC. Do they still sell Rabbit Ears? We can do this.
I'd like to see if they do. Brendan would know, but I mean,
I think they do.
Yeah. And you know, the neat thing is the Oklahoma.
Yes, crowd, they do. They sell, and there's HD signals out there for free that you can get with Rabbit Ears, and they're not Rabbit Ears anymore.
I still like to say Rabbit Ears.
I do too. But guys, this game, Auburn's played Oklahoma 3 times in history. The 1971, Barry Trammell remembered, I said, Auburn got whacked by Oklahoma in the Sugar Bowl, old Tulane Stadium. And then Alabama taken to the woodshed by Nebraska. And he said, and remember, Colorado, it was Oklahoma, Nebraska, and Colorado 1, 2, 3 in the poll. He goes, there was a day when the Big 8 was king. And now Oklahoma's in the SEC. So what do y'all think is going to happen?
Go ahead, Ronnie.
Well, I think Auburn's got a chance to kind of step up for the first time in quite a while and make a statement, have a great win. I think it'll be a close game. I picked Auburn, but I think it could go either way. I mean, I think it's, look, Auburn's won games this year by not turning the ball over. I was talking to Terry Bowden earlier today, and he said, the thing that really stands out to me is last year they beat themselves with turnovers. This year that hasn't happened. He said, we'll see how the quarterback performs, but can he keep his emotions in check going back out there where he transferred from and, all those things. So can he play within himself and play within the offense? If he can, I like Auburn's chances.
I just wonder, and I'll comment a little. I've dug underneath the surface. Have you noticed that there's these media narratives the groupthink sets in? And one reason it's powerful is a lot of times groupthink ends up being right. And I wonder if this Auburn, it's interesting. Auburn, Oklahoma is not only the marquee matchup, but prove me wrong that it's almost the only, at least going into the weekend on paper, it's the only game that jumps off the page to me that looks like a marquee matchup. There's a couple others, but especially in the SEC, there's all these either cupcakes scheduled or out of conference, which is weird. It seems like they could have broken up the schedule a little better. Of course, you start with Alabama and Georgia open dates as they prepare for that clash in Athens. Back in August, we would have thought South Carolina at Mizzou was going to be a Donnybrook, and it may end up being that, but I don't think so. And then, of course, the other one that sort of jumps off the page, Florida going to Miami, but Florida's limping in there, and I don't know many people that like Florida to pull the upset in that one. Miami might be playing the best ball in the country. We'll see in a few weeks. Small sample size, but here's what I think the group think is that Matif is the best quarterback in the country. I don't dispute that he might have earned that. He's electric. He's a gunslinger, a little bit reckless. I think he's thrown 3 interceptions. He's thrown a pick in every game. But if you're racking up 300 or 400 yards through the air, that a one interception usually doesn't hurt you. But I'm curious. Vegas has pushed the line to about 6.5. And the smart guys, I don't wager, but the guys I know that do say, man, Vegas is begging you to bet on Oklahoma in this one. And the over and under 48.5. So I do think Auburn, when did Matif and his OC Ben Arbuckle become miracle workers? I would remind the mostly Auburn listeners to this show, the season for Washington State, the way it ended last year, and I'm going to exonerate him. What does the Catholics or church say, Rob? Dispensation. I'm going to give him dispensation for the Syracuse bowl game because everybody had left town. Yeah. Arbuckle had packed John Matif in a suitcase, and they were in Norman, Oklahoma for that one. That's the world we live in now. But to end the season last year, these two miracle workers, and they're great. There's no doubt about it. I'm being a little snarky to have fun. They end the season with 3 straight losses. And the worst one, arguably, was in Pullman, and that was a 14-15 loss to Wyoming, a stinker. So, and Matif was racking up 300 and 400 yards, high 300s, even in the losses. So we know he can throw. But what is this? A trick question, guys? What is the one thing that Jackson Arnold has already done, has already experienced to prepare for this game that John Matif has not, through no fault of his own, has not had the opportunity to do?
Going on the road and playing in front of a hostile crowd.
You're warm, Ronnie.
That would have been my guess.
Well, he has not gone against an SEC defense, home or on the road. And that's not his fault. He might say, big deal, I can light up anybody you line up. But I just, and normally you'd say, well, Michigan may as well be an SEC, for fierce, savage, deep defense that can really get after you and get home on a pass rush. I think this Auburn front, I disagree with those who say the real matchup in this one. Of course, the matchup is everybody who lines up against each other has a potential for a big play or a bad play that gets you beat. But I'm more intrigued by the Auburn defensive front and what they can do to get after Matif, keep him caged up. Don't let his feet become such a threat every single day. He's going to get his running the ball, but make him throw from a pocket, not breaking containment where he's got the choice of running. Same thing Arnold will have. I think Auburn front can get after him, and it's the first time he will have experienced that. It will help him that he's got a home crowd behind him. But this idea that the pressure's on Arnold because of leaving Oklahoma, I think the pressure's on both of these guys.
John Matif from Little Elm, Texas, and I
said Matif. I apologize.
Yeah. I mean, but I before the show, I was looking at questions that I asked him in those little breakout sessions at media days. And the one thing that he said, I said, what have you learned so far about the culture at Oklahoma and the SEC? And he was like, man, I've never seen anything like SEC media days. He goes, people in this country, this part of the country, they really care about their football. And He goes, I mean, there were 75, 80 people on top of him, talking to him. And I think Doug pointed out so eloquently in the AU dose, a lot of times, and this is another thing Philip Marshall's so great at, there'll be chaos. And then in the middle of it, there's Philip Marshall going, no need to panic, nothing to see here like in Animal House, but he's
Kevin
right.
Bacon.
Yeah, Kevin Bacon. But Doug pointed out the matchups on game day are what matter the most. And you look at Brandon Frazier. Brandon Frazier's the first 8th-year player at Auburn. I think he's 7th or 8th year. Guys, he's resilient. I'll tell you, by the way, another guy that I love who has never quit, I had never heard him complain, is Zykevious Walker. The guys like that have been in your locker room.
Senior, right?
Yeah. We used to have guys
Need
like
some of those.
Like Scooby, James Stewart. He was a 6th-year senior, by the way, from Jeff Davis in Montgomery when I was at Auburn. But I think there's some guys that have been around Auburn a long time. And I think the matchups on game day, you get down in the trenches. I want to ask you all about a guy that could be Auburn's next great defensive lineman, Jared Smith. Jug, you pointed out he had 9 snaps against South Alabama, which I think is the new Southern Miss on Auburn's schedule. But
dangerous to play.
Yeah. And I remember Highway 98. It's about 100 miles from Hattiesburg to Mobile. Southern Miss used to make a living out of coming down and getting kids. But guys, I want y'all to tell me. Start with you, Ronnie. Y'all cover recruiting 24/7. No pun intended. Jared Smith he was a 5-star until he committed to Auburn, but I still rank him as a 5.
Great player. I mean, look, Auburn has depth now that it hasn't had in quite a while, obviously. Yeah. And I think all the way across the board, if you look, there's talent upgrade, and even with a diminished roster the last couple of years, Auburn pissed away plenty of games. So yep. with better players, with more maturity, with more experience, this should be a better year. And the schedule from an Auburn standpoint is more manageable than it's been. So now look, Vandy's not an easy out, and some of these games it look like that. Okay, well, that ought to be a walk. There are no walks in the SEC anymore. But when you compare it to what Florida's facing, that's what Auburn usually faces. So, the schedule, as tough as it is still favorable compared to some of the others around the conference.
And, I appreciate you mentioning the depth. And I say this tongue in cheek, but I couldn't help but think there are many reasons it's an advantage to have depth, especially on your defensive front and the secondary. Guys are going to get dinged up, and you want to keep them fresh to give max effort defensively, arguably more so even than offense. The offensive line doesn't have to chase people east and west the whole game, so it's different conditioning. But right now, playing as many freshmen as Durkin is having or choosing to, for this strategic advantage of depth, I couldn't help but think when I saw Auburn having, once again, they did in the Baylor game and again against South Alabama, especially second half, we couldn't get off the field in the third quarter. I couldn't help but think, when you want your defensive back to be fresh, Rob and Ronnie, when that receiver is juking him and running by him for wide open yardage. It's good that he's fresh while he's watching that happen. And of course, I'm being silly, but I do think that's this depth, especially on the front seven, is going to become a powerful advantage for Auburn as the rest of the SEC, and Auburn will have its share of hopefully just minor injuries. But when that starts to take hold, the teams that look great the first 3 to 5 games of the season, suddenly attrition makes them start having to play guys that are not elite or not, haven't had the reps and the experience. And all of a sudden you start to really like Auburn's schedule from maybe the Georgia game on through November because of this depth. But it may be that what we see Saturday is Hugh and Durkin stay committed to this rotation on defense, and it ends up costing us some big plays. I think it's going to be a tight game. I don't have it in me for one like this to not pick Auburn because I'm not an analyst going on a show paid to give an objective opinion. Probably the most logical pick is if it's a close matchup, pick the home team, all things being equal. I just have a feeling Jackson Arnold has been there and seen this. He knows what it feels like to go against an elite defense like Alabama always has, and he's also done it in Jordan-Hare Stadium. And that happened with no real supporting cast last year. I think that's going to be in evidence. And I do think Auburn's defensive front will cause a couple of mistakes by Mateer, because the guy, I described it as Mateer plays arrogantly. Now, that to the wrong person would sound like a harsh criticism. Yeah. I like the brashness, but the price you pay, you can bet Arbuckle's trying to tone him down. He does not want to manage the game and mitigate risk like I've seen Jackson Arnold coach to do and buy into. Mateer wants to be an ESPN highlight reel. He thinks he can thread the needle on almost any pass, and I think it's going to burn him a time or two this Saturday.
Another thing, one of the most underrated players for most people is another Memphis kid, Kieran Crawford, who played at Briarcrest. He's the son of a legend in Memphis, Xavier X-Man Crawford, who went on to become a professional wrestler. Used to see him over at the pool a lot. Wasn't much of a swimmer, though, but a cool guy to talk to. I mean, built like a professional wrestler. I mean, and Kieran was at Arkansas State. Came into Auburn, no big deal. He came from Arkansas State. What he's doing, along with Keldrick Crawford, and now you got Jared Smith coming in. I'm not jumping the gun, but Auburn fans have been afraid to go out after dark these last 5 years. I mean, it's getting better. I think Freeze, he looked like Debbie Downer's fiance the first few years at Auburn. That Cal trip, why do we have to go across the country? Embrace it, man. You're going to the Bay Area. Auburn's got thousands of alumni in that area working for these tech companies. Like Sam Ginn, the College of Engineering, Vodafone, lives out there. Bottom line, I think Auburn fans are looking at this game as if Auburn gets the win at Oklahoma, it's time to come back out and play. You know, how many times have you been pulled over to get gas and when Auburn was struggling and some Alabama fan comes out of the bathroom, got on a ball cap, says, got 12, shoving it in your face. Now you can go, got 9. I think Auburn people, this is the game that Auburn people are pointing toward as the breakout game, that the great potato famine is over. Was that you, Doug, or someone sent that out? Auburn hadn't been ranked since 21. That's how big this game is. And I hadn't made my pick on it yet. I'm looking at numbers, but Doug and Ronnie, both of y'all, it's everyone thinks because it's on the road. Yep. But John Mateer has not played an SEC defense. And as they say in South Alabama, that's not nothing. That's a big deal.
Yeah, let me be clear and be real, because I know just following the chat room, Rob and Ronnie, on this podcast, you get a sense of the high football IQ of the people that tune in, which is really fun and cool. And it tells us where we can dial. You know, some audiences, if you ask to go talk to the independent living group of seasoned citizens, then you might dial it down to whatever level they follow football. It doesn't make them not smart, but you got to put the time and research into really being able to talk about X's and O's and schemes in football. But let me be clear. I don't know. Sometimes people want you and Ronnie and myself to foretell the future. And I don't know. I'll tell you this, that I'm so worn out, and I've written about it, Rob, as you know, but I'm so worn. I call it linear thinking. I heard Andy Staples call it something smarter sounding, transitive properties. Remember that from algebra classes and geometry. But fans think, okay, I watched Oklahoma look really sensational in both phases of the game. People tend to gloss when you have explosive plays. They gloss over the errors that can be exploited by a better team, and they just assume, well, therefore, since Oklahoma's at home and Jackson Arnold really looked bad at Oklahoma last year, therefore this game won't be close. Oklahoma wins it big. And every single week is a game unto itself with matchups, game planning. Nobody understands that both Venables and Hugh Freeze have held things back defensively, offensively. They've specific. They've been planning this game since, because they know it's a swing game if you want to stay in the playoff hunt. The winner of this one hangs on to their mulligan, I call it. You can lose one or two in the SEC and you're in great shape. Look at how rough Auburn's schedule, Ronnie, has become just in the games. All of a sudden, Vanderbilt, I mean, we were going to worry anyway. Now, my goodness, Vanderbilt might be favored in Nashville, depending on how things go. So there's not any A equals B and B equals C, therefore A equals C. No, it's a completely new algebraic formula depending on matchups, strategy, game planning, breaks and bungling mistakes that no one could have seen coming, whether it's a kicker that, mysteriously, or just like that play to start the last game. There's a kickoff, a fair catch, and the wrong guy catches the ball. Have y'all ever seen that play? And they give, instead of 25, Auburn gets the ball at about the 10. They go 90 yards and score. But that's why we love college football. There are going to be things that the forecast completely looks stupid. Just like, who's with me? Did anybody see a 22-19 national championship game coming between Oregon and Auburn? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
The two most high-octane coaches that we had that year.
Yeah. Ronnie? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's going to be
Great.
I think, like you said, Rob, I mean, I think Auburn fans are shell-shocked. So it's going to be, if Auburn wins this weekend, you're going to see some excitement that you haven't seen in quite a while, and if you go in and then you got A&M the week after that, I mean, you get through these next 4 games, 3-1, you're in pretty good shape on the backside of the schedule.
Let me double down on that great point you just made, Ronnie. I think not in terms of what AP does. I think we can by now say we should pay less attention, not more, to the rationality of the AP poll. But if Auburn goes into Norman and wins that one, and they would be helped on the PR front, helped by the fact that that Oklahoma, understandably, has been hyped so much. But if that happens, all of a sudden Hugh Freeze and the Auburn Tigers and Hugh Freeze's golf swing is all that's talked about in the media. Hey, buddy, we got some ambient noise going on the studio. Sorry about that, guys. So Auburn won't be top 10, but Auburn will be inside the top 12 to 15. Y'all agree, if they can go into Norman and win. And then all of a sudden, those of us that saw 4-1 coming out of September, I'll take it. Then we'll get greedy and say we can go in College Station and go 5-0.
Well, everything you do just sets up tomorrow. You get the win at Oklahoma and you're 4-0. You're going to Texas A&M not tight, but confident. It's terrible to be tight and not have confidence. I remember Bo Nix was asked after Auburn's last win over Alabama, after the 2 charitable write-offs in 21 and 23. But he said, most teams think they're going to beat Alabama. We know we're going to beat Alabama. Auburn's got to get back to that. And I look at this roster, but let's talk about the offensive line, because it's been 2017, 2019 maybe, since Auburn's had an SEC offensive line. Nothing personal against these guys, but, man, it's been rough. I mean, and just like Kentucky, I heard Heath Klein on the Chuck Oliver show say the other day, Zach Calzada, how long has this guy been around? He goes, he's like that old couch that you put on the side of the street when you're moving. Somebody picked him up and they sat on him and the leg broke out from under them. He's already hurt again at Kentucky. But yep. I just think Auburn people, this offensive line, and nobody's done a better job of chronicling the misery on Auburn's offensive front than Jason Caldwell over the last 8 years. I'd love to have Jason in court with me if I was ever in trouble.
Jason's great.
He is the man from the marble town, Sylacauga. But he talks about, and maybe Ronnie on 24/7 Sports on AU Undercover, y'all covered it. Every one of Auburn's starting offensive linemen has received a favorable, positive NFL grade. That's a big deal, and there's some depth there. What about DeAndre Carter? That's the biggest celebrated signee Auburn's had in memory, and he isn't starting. That ought to tell you something.
It does, but man, go if you have not seen it. There's some. I'll send it to y'all. But go look at Jeremiah Wright is
God.
just mauling people on run
Yeah.
blocking, and he's gotten so excited. I think they all have it, getting to the second level on run blocking, and that's why I think you're going to see Auburn be slightly run heavy. But as I look at this game, you can't force it. You got to be smart and look for the opportunities where Venables, and he'll disguise. He's so good at it that he's giving you an opportunity for a one-on-one match, which Baylor refused to do, and they paid the price for it. Auburn could run the ball at will, especially with Arnold up the gut. But that look at the NIL. This might be interesting. If we could know, and we can guess at it pretty closely, what is the NIL deal of Auburn's playmakers on offense? And you got to start with Cam Coleman, close second, probably Singleton, right in the mix there, Jackson Arnold, and we could name others. And this is a game, if you're going to lose this game, lose it with the ball in the hands of your big time, and yes, I mean money, playmakers, or the guys that have emerged in fall camp that we know have ability. And Malcolm Simmons may be one of those. So I think at some point you're going to have to take your share of shots downfield, because Venables won't be able to help himself. He'll come after, he'll send extra pressure if we can run the ball. And I think we can, because with that jet sweep and what Arnold does, it's very difficult to consistently stop the Auburn run game, because there's somebody you're not accounting for if they don't send a linebacker to track the jet sweep, or if they keep a spy there on Arnold, then that sets up to go deeper than we've been throwing the ball.
Ronnie, talk about Auburn's running backs, but running behind that offensive line. Last year for the season, Auburn had a paltry 13 touchdowns total. They're already at 10.
Yeah, look, and it all goes back to offensive line. Look, even if you go back to the end of the Malzahn era, there were complaints. There was a lot of talk inside the staff about the way the offensive line was recruited. The offensive line coach always had issues with Gus. Hey, I like this guy. Let's take this guy. No. And Gus had to sign off on everybody, which is his prerogative. He's the head coach. But when your offensive line coach wants to bring in guy after guy after guy, and you keep telling him no, and you want to take this guy, and your assistant coaches don't like him, then you get what you got the last 5 years. And then you bring in Potato Man on top of that, and it was,
We can be that irreverent by now, right?
Yeah. Well, Dave Bartu just texted me the stats I asked him for College Football Matrix, and he was on our show Monday, and he's got a new top 25 that's really cool. The Vegas betting
an awesome
numbers.
Concept, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And so Dave's
AP
watching
poll
now.
by Vegas.
Yeah, and it's like it's really revealing. But he talked about bye weeks. Teams coming off a bye. He said teams coming off a bye in the month of September win at a 50% rate. It's a little bit higher in October, and it gets better in November. That's something to pay attention to. Speaking of that, Georgia and Alabama both have a bye week before they play each other.
Alabama, it's only fair to be fair to those two juggernauts of the last 15 to 20 years.
Yeah.
I don't have any problem with them both scheduling. I'm glad Auburn's got an open date before Georgia. Matter of fact, a not insignificant factor for that Auburn-Georgia night game, not to get ahead of ourselves, is that Georgia is going to be still coming off. I'm sure it's going to be a physical game against Alabama. And then 2 weeks later, 2 weeks later, they come to Jordan-Hare. I don't know who Georgia plays a week before on October 4th. Do you have that, Rob?
Yeah, I'm looking at it. They play Kentucky.
Yeah, and so anytime you line up, like Auburn got dinged up with a few players against South Alabama. So if you go out there and play, there's risk. But and then, of course, part two made me rethink all of this, saying it's a bad idea to have an open date unless the coaching staff works them hard during the open date.
Well, think about it, Ronnie. Baseball-wise.
Well, that's the other key. How do the coaches handle the off week? I mean, you can beat guys up. You can also get them rest and, polish up on some things and, try to keep healthy and, all that stuff. So, and again, I think you handle an open date differently in September than you do in November. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast because you're more beat up in November.
Yeah.
And after the season, I think, look, but Rob, you're the stats that you just quoted are, I think, dead on because the longer the season goes, the more beat up you get, and you need that. You need the rest. You need the break, and so it makes sense that the off week would make a bigger difference later in the season you go.
Well, you start looking at Auburn's team. Then you talk about the running backs. Jeremiah Cobb, Damari Austin. He's been banged up. Darnell Robinson. Doug talked a lot about him at UConn. He's the number 21. My favorite childhood running back number for James Brooks out of Warner Robins. Then you look at Mabson, the kid out of Auburn High School. He's
Omar.
built. Yeah, Omar Mabson is built like Michael Dyer out of Little Rock Christian, I like this running back room. And then you got Alvin Henderson out of Elba. It's going to take him a while to get acclimated. Then you look at the receivers. Eric Singleton Jr. Looks like he's good to go this week. Cam Coleman. Last year, this is just, I tell it like I see it. Last year, it looked to me like Hugh Freeze was trying to keep those 4 freshman receivers from hitting the portal. So Auburn never really established a running game. And I said, when Auburn fans are giddy about beating Kentucky on Tuesday or Wednesday going into Vanderbilt week, you better put that one in the rearview mirror. Auburn hadn't lost to Kentucky in Lexington since 1966. They don't play them every year, but it's been a minute. So, y'all, what about the receivers? And people question, can Jackson Arnold throw for 350 yards? You know what he needs to do? He needs to manage the game. He doesn't have to. So,
right.
You can't double team Cam. You can't double team Eric Singleton. You can't do it. What does Auburn do on the passing game that they hadn't maybe done so far? We don't know the game plan.
Well, I don't think there's any question that there are going to be wrinkles you haven't seen. But look, there are also things that I am absolutely positive that Hugh Freeze and his staff have put in to make Oklahoma prepare for, because that's what you do, and you build up. There are also a ton of certainly a handful of other things that they're holding back that they haven't shown, and so you haven't needed to show it the last 2 weeks, and a lot of the stuff, like you go into the first week, you get a great win at Baylor. Now you're getting to the meat of the SEC schedule, but they'll keep adding to the offense. They'll keep adding things, and wouldn't shock me at all if there were a couple of trick plays that they put in.
I'm intrigued by, and this to me in a big game week, the fun is trying to imagine. Gone are the days where we can easily get intel or a whisper or two of a play that might be coming. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but it seems like coaches seem to much less often call, the Statue of Liberty play, flea flicker, hook and lateral, those 3 plays like Boise ran to take down, oddly enough, Oklahoma. Was it 2007 Fiesta Bowl?
Yeah.
They still happen, but I think what is more likely going on in these coaches, it's a chess match that's fun to watch. Hugh Freeze has shown, and his brain trust, they've shown some formations and looks like that jet sweep, that off of that, they've only done a couple of the options. One is obviously handing the ball off. The other is faking the handoff and you throw downfield. But there are 2 or 3 other options off that same formation that's easily drilled in fall camp. The same thing. I think the biggest artillery withheld that has to be stressful for Venables and his defensive staff is they know who Eric Singleton is. They know who Cam Coleman and Malcolm Simmons are. These guys can all 3 of them can blow the top off of the back end. They know that. Does he really think they can be reckless and go man coverage, Oklahoma that is, defensively, go man coverage all game? And you better get home. You better pressure. And they also know Jackson Arnold escapability. So you could see Auburn and Oklahoma, both of them have this capability that their biggest plays come out of not a straight play, but the chaos of breaking containment, a quarterback that sees downfield and takes a shot. And the only advice I would give Arnold, and he shouldn't listen to me because I've never coached a game, but is there will be moments in the game. It's not every play. Mostly listen to your coaching. But there will be moments where it's no longer a play call. It's chaos, and don't be scared to let the damn ball rip and trust Cam Coleman and these guys to go up and win a 50-50 battle. You saw, I mean, that fourth down that Gunner Stockton threw, good grief. That was big time gutty football, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it
was. And I mean, look, and I think, the point I made a minute ago about Freeze holding some things back, Oklahoma's done the same thing. Brent Venables is going to have some exotic blitzes. He's going to try to confuse him. And look, he's taking over the defense. They're going to be they're going to have some things that Auburn is not expecting. Jackson Arnold is going to have to be prepared. The staff is going to have to be prepared to make adjustments during the game and certainly at halftime. There are going to be some things that they're going to confuse Auburn. I'm sure on the other side of the ball, there are going to be some things that confuse Oklahoma. That's part of the chess match.
Well, the one thing, one of the most memorable games Auburn ever had, going on the road to Florida in '94 in the Swamp. Andy Fuller, tight end, catches 7 balls for 126 yards. Like, who's this guy? Where's in the program? He was the tight end. Just didn't use him a lot. I see something like this happening on the road. And I think, too, when you've got an offensive line like Auburn's that seems to struggle in pass protection, you're going to have to do some things to overcome that. And Doug, Auburn run blocking, they're Auburn's one of 4 teams to rank in the top 20 nationally in rushing offense and rushing defense. The other ones are Washington, BYU, and I think Navy. So that's, again, if you look at the stats, Auburn is there quietly. And I'm looking forward to seeing Dave Bartu's poll, top 25, the Vegas poll that he puts together. But I'm thinking about this. Talking to Barry Trammell this morning from the Tulsa World, who's covered Oklahoma since he was 17. He talked about his first game covering Oklahoma. Bob Stoops was a redshirt sophomore for the Iowa Hawkeyes playing Oklahoma in Norman. Been around a while, seen a lot of OU football. Their defense is a lot better. Let's talk about Brent Venables, the matchup with Brent Venables and DJ Durkin, because those are 2 of the smartest, craftiest, most imaginative defensive guys who will get after your ass for a full 60. Not everyone is that aggressive.
Well, before I cut out, because I do have a hard stop,
okay.
Let me say I like Auburn. It's not the most confident pick I'll ever make, and if Auburn wins in Norman, I'll be even bolder going forward. But because the nature of, I'm more of a fan than an analyst until it's serious
You're
money.
You're pretty damn smart, though. I pay attention to what a lot of people pay attention to what you say.
You just have to put a little research in and listen to smart people. But I think Auburn has more than what the body of work in 3 games is misleading in the case of Auburn. I know the talent is there. I think except for the Baylor game, by design, they've held some things back. Part of that was you could not lose the Baylor game. So they played it very conservative offensively at Baylor, and they haven't had to be more aggressive and go deep in the bag the last 2 games. Now, if South Alabama got it to a 1-score game, you would have probably seen more. But does anybody seriously think if Hugh Freeze wanted to score more, unleashing the whole package Saturday, he could have done it? Of course he could. So I think Auburn, it's a nail biter. That's what we get on these big games. Usually both defenses will acquit themselves well. I like Auburn about 27-23. And Alex McPherson's health, I think, will inure to Auburn's benefit this Saturday, because this is a game where it's hard to, if you win the red zone, if Auburn keeps that streak going, it might be a little bit more through field goals than touchdowns. And that's not all bad as long as you can play defensively, hold Oklahoma in the red zone, hold them to 3. And as for Venables and Durkin, their head coach Venables has one advantage, and that's that he's the boss. And if he wants to be more conservative or less, he can do that. You can bet Hugh Freeze was giving some idea to Dirk and how aggressive he wants to be early game. If Matera's got too much time and escapability, and we're playing it conservatively with dime coverage, the head coach might whisper in his ear to bring more pressure, and that can be good or bad. So that's they don't play each other. I know you guys know that, but I think I want to see Dirk, and I would like to see him not be enamored with rushing only 3 guys, because Mateer can see the field. Somebody's going to break open if you try to do that. And the guy has great velocity on the ball and great accuracy. So I would rather come after him and take our lumps if he gets it downfield and we can't break it up, or there's receiver hit. They're going to hit a few, but I would rather get beat by coming after him than I would laying back on that coverage. You guys have a great week, my friend. War Eagle.
Oh, man, thank you so much, Doug. Love it.
Thanks, Doug.
All right, Ronnie, look at the stats running the ball. I mean, last year's stats. Mateer threw for 3,500, ran for 826, and a bunch of touchdowns. Jackson Arnold, he's one of the leading rushers in the SEC, and he's a quarterback, which lends people to be pessimists and say, well, Auburn can't throw the ball. Just remember, Jackson Arnold came out of high school, number 4 quarterback in America, out of Denton Guyer in the Metroplex, Dallas-Fort Worth area, number 10 overall player. Keep in mind, Oklahoma, the claim was that was the highest rated offensive signee in their history. Now, Brent Venables was very effusive in his praise of Jackson Arnold at media days, as he was Michael Hawkins, who was a legacy player from there. Along the line of what Doug just said, Ronnie, put on your coaching hat and let's break it down. Which quarterback is a bigger threat with his legs and his arm? I mean, the total package from what you've seen of the two so far. And yet, keep in mind, neither one of them has played an SEC defense. I mean, no, Jackson did last year. So that's important.
Well, I don't think we know yet.
Okay.
I don't think we know yet. I mean, we're going to know a lot more about both teams after this weekend. My guess is that Oklahoma's a little bit overrated and Auburn's a little bit underrated. But again, we'll find out. I mean, I think everybody's kind of holding back on Auburn because it has been such a long time since Auburn has been good. So I think people are rightly cautious. So, this weekend, Auburn wins. All of a sudden, you're going to hear a lot of talk about Auburn.
Yeah.
Naturally.
And Auburn people, again, I'm sure a lot of Auburn fans are going to Norman. And again, you watch TV, they act like, how far is the drive from Auburn to Norman? Well, there are thousands of Auburn grads and fans in Memphis. They're in Dallas, Fort Worth. There's a ton. They're in Oklahoma. They're all over the place. And you know what? Some of them might even fly. There'll be a lot of Auburn people there. Now, Ronnie, I got to ask you, used to be a gentleman's agreement. Auburn gave 10,000 seats to Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee. LSU wasn't an annual opponent, but they reciprocated. Now, they're almost putting the fans outside the stadium. And I guess it's because you've got to sell every seat and put lazy boys in there and recliners and whatever, and sell tickets down on the field and what have you. But I don't know. And then you buy the tickets online. There were a lot of guys like my man Snake, a legendary scalper who used to work over there by the Auburn basketball arena. I'm like, Snake, what's your last name? He goes, I ain't got no last name. I'm like, okay. But Snake always came through with tickets for me. Cash, money, always. I think there are going to be a lot of Auburn people out there.
There always are. Look, Auburn travels, and it's pretty amazing. I think people still, as much credit as Dye gets, I think people still don't understand the value, how much he changed Auburn athletics, and Auburn in general, and Auburn football in particular. Moving the Alabama game there. Look, prior to it had been a long time since Auburn had been really good prior to 1983. And so, look, Auburn had some great seasons, all that stuff. But I mean, from an SEC championship standpoint, it had been a while. And officially, Auburn had only had one SEC championship in 1957. So since then, you've had Dye had 4, Tuberville had 1, Chiswick had 1, Gus had 1. Yeah. So the only guy that really hadn't been successful is Potato Head. So the Dye changed a lot, moving the Alabama game there, expanding Jordan-Hare Stadium. And look, people forget, in the 80s when Jordan-Hare Stadium was expanded, it was significantly larger than Bryant-Denny. Yeah. And I'm not, look, a lot of that was Bobby Louder and Pat Dye and company saying, hey, look, we're not going to bend over for Alabama. Yeah. We're going to be, we're committed and we're all on the same page and we're not ashamed of where we are. And we're going to say, hey, look, we're going to play our home game in Auburn and we're going to do it just like you've done it. And if you don't like it, too bad.
Yeah. Well, one of the interesting things when the Alabama contingent met with Auburn in 85 or 86 to talk about moving the game, I think they met at the Capital City Club in downtown Montgomery by the river. And the Alabama group showed up 25 or 30 minutes late. And that's an old tactic of intimidation. Like, we'll get there when we want to. Bobby Louder was like, let's go. And they're like, oh, I know your dad. Great. That's wonderful. What we need to decide here today in this meeting, it's pretty simple. Is this game going to be played at 2:30, the CBS game of the week, or is it going to be a night game? Well, hell will freeze over if we ever come to Auburn. And the reply, what I've been told was, that would be a shame that you would forfeit such a great rivalry. That was a defining moment. And Auburn people, look, my oldest daughter's an Alabama grad. I got, from marriage, I remarried, but everybody else is Auburn. Still love her. She's still a good person. I always joke about that. There's nothing like this rivalry because the fan bases of Auburn and Alabama are married to each other. And usually I'm married to a Vol for life. I mean, you can't escape this. And Brendan, our producer, Gator Bait, all the Florida, it's insane, but it makes it fun because it is really personal. And I think Auburn fans look at Auburn and Auburn's teams like parents do at their children. Sometimes your children disappoint you, but you still love them. You don't quit loving them and quit going to their games. And I remember, like, Pat Dye, times would get rough, and he'd say, you just got to love them more, love on them more. Just that means the harder you push them, the harder I push my kids. They always say, Dad, I used to think you were cruel, but now I know why you did that, because you can't survive. I think Freeze looks like he's happy now. He looked, looking at that roster he had, and no offense to the guys on the roster, but it wasn't good. And I don't think he believed he could win. And it starts at the top. When Terry Bowden came to Auburn, I mean, he was like some guy that lives in the median on I-65 between Montgomery and Mobile. He had to pull out of his driveway doing 105, man. I mean, that's just the way it is. And you went 20 straight. Mm-hmm. And, no Auburn coach since Pat died in 1981, other than Brian Harsin, who mercifully was relieved of his duties before he could complete a second year, has won fewer than 8 games in his second year. Mm-hmm. Another weird stat, no Auburn coach has ever lost in Oxford to an Ole Miss team and survived to be the Auburn coach the following year. It's strange. Yeah. And then I don't think ever, not in the modern era, not since color TV, has Auburn been an underdog to Vanderbilt. Doug, y'all talked about that earlier. So I think, Ronnie, Auburn people want to come out and get excited and go buy him a Yeti tumbler with 9 national championships on it. Mm-hmm. This Saturday will be the game that Auburn people point to should Auburn go into Norman and get a victory. Agree?
Yeah, look, it's a statement game for Auburn if you win. If you lose, the season's not over. No. But if you go win, it's a long season. But as we said earlier in the show, you give up your early year mulligan. You can still have 2 losses, but if you beat Oklahoma, things look a little bit easier going down the stretch. Look, because if you lose and then your next games are at A&M, Georgia, Missouri, those are all really good opponents. And if you're coming off a loss to Oklahoma, it makes that look a little bit more daunting. If you win, then all of a sudden you're like, okay, we got a shot here now. Not that you don't have a shot. Not that you don't have a shot anyway. But for a young team, a young quarterback, guys are still getting used to playing together.
Yeah,
it's a big confidence game.
It's hard if you've ever seen a snowball or an avalanche come down from the top of a mountain. It's really hard to stop it. If Auburn wins at Oklahoma Saturday, I think Auburn could have a season like they did in 2013. And remember, Auburn was coming off the worst season since 1950. My dad was in school at Auburn. He saw Auburn lose to Wofford, and he said, "So what did everybody do after the game?" He said, "Went home." Nobody believed it. But we'll go ahead and wrap it up, Ronnie. I think Auburn, win or lose Saturday, is feeling they're feeling more confident. And I have not seen Auburn this aligned since the Sugar Bowl in 1983. And you and I both know Auburn history. Even people in Columbanner know that this, I'm not saying Auburn's going to win the national championship, but I do think there's an alignment, and they're doing a lot of things that they've needed to do for a long time. And the writers, Christian Clemente, Nathan King, Philip Marshall, Jason Caldwell, everybody at AU Undercover, I go there 15, 20 times a day. It's like I'm like one of those day traders. You can't get enough of it. But it's been a fun show. And so, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. For executive producer Brendan Martin, extraordinaire, the best in the business. Ronnie, I know y'all be writing stuff all night and every night, and you'll be there on the field in Norman. The staff will be there. Maybe not you, but it's going to be fun. But thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next week.